So we're joined today by Professor Tetsuro Matsuzawa, the director of the Primate Research Institute.
Thanks for joining us on the PrimateCast.
Thank you.
And he is in charge of the chimpanzee project at PRI, both in the laboratory and also in the field in West Africa, Bosu.
I just coming back from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
It was really enjoyable 1 full month in Africa.
That's right.
I liked it.
You make it a point every year.
Yes,
over the
26 annual visit for 26 years since 1986.
Wow. So what's your impression of kind of the evolution of research at Bosu since you started?
Well, Bosu is one of the long-running research site of chimpanzees in Africa. You can pick up like Gombe, run by Jane Goodall British, and what's next? Mahare, that has been run by Toshisada Nishida, who passed away unfortunately last year. And the third longest, which one? Could be Bosu, since 1976. Almost the same time, 1977-8 in Thai, Côte d'Ivoire, by Christoph Bosch. That is currently run by German Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology.
That's right.
And the fifth could be Kibale, run by Richard Wrangham, Harvard University, USA. So let's think about, say, 5 major sites. Among 5, 2 are run by Japanese. That is one. And look at another species of genus Pan, so-called bonobos, who is a pioneer of the wild bonobo study. That is, of course, Professor Kano.
That's right.
Japanese. So in that sense, if we think about the evolutionary neighbors of humans, chimpanzees and bonobos, Japanese has made a lot of efforts and contribution to understand their lives and their minds.
So that's a great segue into a very interesting point of the history of primatology, because in Japan that obviously started quite a number of years ago. So can you comment a little bit on how that developed?
Even in Africa.
That's right.
They were there very early.
Yes. I think in the West, people, for example, we talked about chimpanzees. So I do not deny that Jane Goodall made a great contribution to understand the chimpanzee in the wild, because she is actually the first person who made the successful research of chimpanzees. It was, in my recollection, it was July 14th. She landed on the shore of Gombe, studied her long-running research. It's amazing, more than 50 years.
Of one community, it's very amazing.
1960.
That's right.
But not many people recognize that Japanese started the first African survey in 1958, 2 years before Jane started Gombe research. So 1958, Imanishi and Itani, our spiritual ancestors, they made the first survey of African great apes in 1958, and they looked around 8 countries for 3 months to find the good research sites. And they continued the survey in 1959 and 60, and finally settled in Mahale in 1965. It took 7 years. But we started earlier. But why the difference between British and Japanese? Because of the history. So eastern part of Africa was colonized by British.
That's
right.
right.
Japanese had no relationship with African continent. So that is the major difference as far as I understand. in terms of primatology, I think Japan, the country, has a great advantage in comparison to European countries and North America. Very simple. We have Japanese monkeys. There are no American monkeys, no German monkey, no French monkeys.
That's right.
So, yeah. So I think I really appreciate the existence of wild Japanese monkeys in this country.
So how exactly did the study of the species begin?
I appreciate your question. Japanese primatology, it's very exceptional discipline. You can pinpoint which day the discipline started.
That's right.
That is December the 3rd, 1948.
1948, wow.
1948. Please remember that there was the World War II. It was finally over in August 15th, 1945. So Japan surrendered. So we completely defeated after the 2 atomic bombs in Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So 1948, that means only 3 years after the end of the World War II. Imanishi, at that time he was 42 years old. He was unpaid lecturer of Kyoto University.
Wow. Very dedicated man.
Yes, very dedicated man. Of course, at that point in Kyoto University, that has more than 100 years history. So there is a department of biology,
Yes.
and there is a section of anthropology, and there is a professor of zoology. But he was unpaid lecturer, his position. But his question was so unique. He wanted to know the evolutionary origin of human society. Yeah, it's everywhere. There are human societies, but he is among the first person who raised a very clear question. Where did it come from? Human society, the evolutionary basis. And first, he had the experience in Mongolia in 1930s to study the society of horses. So that first he went to Toi Peninsula to know the society of horses. And he was accompanied by 2 undergraduate students. One is Itani, another is Kawamura. Later both became professors of Kyoto University, but at that time they were undergraduate students. By the way, anyway, one evening, after watching the horses' behavior, they recognized a group of monkeys moving in the woods. And almost instantaneously, 3 of them, all of them, got the idea, it's not horses. It could be monkeys. To know more about the evolutionary origin of humans.
I love this story because it seems so serendipitous that they stumble into monkeys, which actually is a much better model probably for human societies than the horses they originally wanted to study.
So, Andrew and Chris, both of you were the students of Primate Research Institute. So as you know, we have the special program for the freshmen. So the first year of the graduate school, all students are asked to go to Koshima and also visit to Toi Peninsula to see the horses.
That's right.
And at this moment, it's not so far. I mean, only 30 minutes drive from Koshima to Toi Peninsula, not so far. But imagine, no road, no cars. So one full day they walk with huge luggage from Toi Peninsula to Koshima to see the monkeys.
So how did they know about Koshima?
That is another interesting story. It's not the researchers, but the ordinary people made a lot of effort to do the conservation of monkeys in Koshima, in the wild. That somehow reminds me of the case of Bossu chimpanzee in Guinea. So local people, the chimpanzees are totem. So the local people made a lot of conservation efforts in Guinea. The same story in Japan. Local people made a lot of efforts to make the conservation of wild Japanese monkeys in a small island named Koshima. So Koshima monkeys itself, maybe people in the primatology area too, they do not really know the full story of Koshima.
I think so.
Right.
Many people think about, Koshima monkey, sweet potato
That's
washing.
right.
So researchers started those kind of things. That's true. But in advance, the prerequisite is in 1930s. So before the World War II, already Koshima monkey is so-called national treasure.
Oh, wow.
It was registered
I didn't know
as
that.
national treasure because of the local people, their efforts. So people know that in this island there are monkeys, a group of monkeys, and they continue to protect it. But no research, no academic work. So definitely Imanishi had known that there are monkeys in Koshima, not so far from Toi Peninsula. So that was the very basic point of their transferring from horses to monkeys. They had the knowledge, the monkeys there. So they made just what they have to do is only one thing. They make their own decision. Let's go to monkeys. And it was December the 3rd, 1948. They landed on Koshima, tried to find the monkeys. That's it. Important point is, at that time, no one knows about monkeys. It's completely different from the current situation. Yeah, all things like patrilineal lineage, no one knows it.
That's right. Yeah, I think
matrilineal lineage. Yeah.
One of the things that maybe some of the listeners might not appreciate is that it was the Japanese researchers that pretty much developed this entire area of really focusing on individuals within their societies of primates to develop this study.
Yes. Yeah. For the ordinary people and academic people too, a group of monkeys, you can see, maybe you can discriminate males from females, or you can easily see mother and infant, that's all. But two important things we have to know. Imanishi wanted to know the society as a whole. It's not the individual monkey. So what he wanted to know is the society. What kind of society? You can see a group of monkeys, but what kind of society they have? And for that purpose, you have to know the members of the society at the individual level.
Right.
So that is identification. And the question is about human society at the evolutionary basis. So for Imanishi, the members of the community in humans, the members of the community in monkeys, not different at all. So that is the reason why they gave a nickname, not the alphanumeric code.
That was kind of the Western standard.
Yeah.
Right. To give it.
So gave the name to the individual monkeys. Then just with the patience, keep the records for a long time. And innovative procedure at that time is provisioning.
Yes.
To give up food, they invited the members to the researchers. So later, the procedure is criticized, and from provisioning to habituation, the method was changed. But the idea is the same.
Yeah.
How to identify each member of the community to know the group as a whole.
And I think nobody could really argue the benefits that came out of those early studies that used provisioning strictly because of the clarity or resolution with which they could really start to understand those groups. So
it's interesting that it's often taught in animal behavior courses about the sweet potato washing of one particular individual. But there's also this kind of larger context.
Yes, because sweet potato washing, that episode was found in September 1953. This means 1948. So it's 5 years later than since the initial effort. And actually, in the first 7 years, according to the record written by Itani, he is a sort of the manager of managing the group of researchers. According to his record, in the first 7 years, the Japanese primatologist visited 19 places from Shimokita to Yakushima to know various troops of Japanese monkeys.
And that's interesting because Shimokita is actually the northernmost location for primates aside from humans.
Yes.
Right.
But naturally living.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting, as you mentioned earlier, that the same group went to Africa and went to 8 countries.
Right.
Yes.
Primates,
so really, well, in that sense, those founders, they are really nature lovers.
So what were the key factors in the development of primatology in Japan versus what was going on in the West?
The clear difference of the study of primates in the West means European and North American and Japanese is the field work. And that is because of Japanese monkeys. We have monkeys in the wild, so the discipline started in the wild.
That's right.
Yeah. Primatology in the West started in the non-human primates kept in zoo setting, in captivity, behavior, physiology, whatever. So that was the focus. But in our case, the origin is very clear. Thanks to the existence of wild Japanese monkeys, we started primatology as a fieldwork to know their lives in the wild. So this still keep going in the institute. That's the reason why whatever your subject, whatever your major, you have to go to Koshima first to see the Japanese monkeys. So for 1 full week, you have to spend there to know the monkeys in the wild. So that is the policy of education, to keep the spiritual tradition to the next generation.
So I'm interested in how Imanishi went from this adventurous spirit going all over Japan, going to Africa, and then his idea to consolidate everything into one research institute.
Yeah. In that sense, yes, I really admire his long-term perspective, wide perspective. One day I was so surprised to see the visual archives, old photos of Imanishi and Itani's expeditions to Africa in 1958, 1959, 1960, and I think it's a photo in 1962 or something. It's before Mahale, so I think it was called Kabogo. Anyway, it's a Tanganyika Lake shore near Gombe, near Mahale, but a different place. He and his team first settled, tried to habituate wild chimpanzees. And at that time, his way is completely different from what we expect. It's a huge expedition like Stanley in Africa. So they brought the house the table and chair and everything into the field.
Okay.
So their research facility is really fancy one. So that resembles the Antarctic expedition and Himalayan expedition. So it's a big expedition to Africa. So that photo is Imanishi sitting on the chair in front of the house. But if you carefully look at the photo, there is a plate sticked on the wall, and it says Kyoto University Primate Center.
Okay.
So that was the first primate center.
Yeah. Already he had the idea to expand a chimpanzee study based on Japanese studies for a decade. Then chimpanzee gorilla studies. And he has already had the perspective to build the first institute of primatology in Japan. So at that point already he had the idea of founding Primate Research Institute, National Institute in Kyoto University.
And so when did that actually happen?
I think that photo is 1962 or something, but actually 1964, the top academic organization in this country is called Science Council Japan. Science Council of Japan made a recommendation to the prime minister of the country, the top person in this country. The recommendation is you should start Primate Research Institute in this country.
How did you get started in primatology?
I happen to be a student of Kyoto University in 1969. The reason why I said I happen to be is I was raised in Tokyo area. Nursery school, primary school, secondary school, high school, I was in Tokyo. So I was supposed to become Tokyo University student. But 1969 is the storm of student power all over the world. So in the long history, more than 100 years, University of Tokyo declared no entrance examination.
Okay.
1969, they stopped. So the students, my generation, all went to Kyoto. No choice. So Kyoto and Tokyo, not much different. And Tokyo said no entrance examination. So all candidates went to Kyoto. So I happened to go to Kyoto. But student power and problems still continues. This means Kyoto University too, it was closed. Entrance examination, yes. I became Kyoto University undergraduate student, but nothing to do. So what I decided to do was climbing. I happen to like climbing mountains. So I chose Kyoto University Alpine Club. So it is without intention. So I encountered Imanishi in mountaineering. So I was so much fascinated by mountaineering. So I was connected to Nishibori and Kuwabara too because of mountaineering. But all the members of the mountaineering club means they are the students or graduate students turned to become professors in different disciplines. So the golden rule is you have to be a unique to become a professor. You have to find a new virgin peak in the academic field. So looking at the back of my colleagues, my senior colleagues, I try to find my own academic niche. And it was a question about the evolutionary basis of mind.
Wow.
So human mind, it is so clear we perceive this world like this. But why? How do we get here? For that purpose, we have to know the evolutionary neighbors. How do the monkeys, apes perceive this world? That may be the unique approach to understand human mind, because human mind has been studied by so many psychologists, cognitive scientists. It was not new for me, but I tried to be a unique. So I wanted to know the perceptual world of non-human animals, starting from rats.
From rats?
Yes.
I didn't know this is part of your history.
So my major was a sort of neuroscience of rat's brain. So rat's behavior and brain is connected. And also human vision. So how about the binocular depth perception of humans? So I did both. So human visual processing and rat's neuroscience, and combining together to become how the world is perceived by the monkeys through the behavior. So I was lucky enough to become a young assistant professor here in PRI at the age of 26.
Which is a very young age considering the current situation.
And it's a tenure position.
Yes.
So I think the professors at that time make a sort of a bet, a huge investment to a young boy. He could become a good scholar. So let's take this boy as assistant professor.
I wonder if you can talk. So by the time you came to PRI, it had been established for a while since Imanishi founded it.
Yes.
And you came at the same time as kind of the start of more focused chimpanzee research here.
Good question. So Imanishi's effort turned to become a national institute. It was 1967. So 1964 is a recommendation from Science Council of Japan to Prime Minister. And 3 years later, 1967, Primate Research Institute was built. And it was in the perspective of Imanishi. As Andrew described, it has a wide variety of disciplines, not only sociology and ecology, but also psychology, neuroscience, biochemistry. So Imanishi is characterized by his holistic approach to know the things as a whole. So I became an assistant professor of Department of Psychology because of my major. In 1976, December, so it means almost 10 years after the creation of the institute. So already 10 years elapsed when I arrived.
Right. And had it always been a goal to bring chimpanzees to the institute since the
from
field
the
sites
beginning?
were already around?
From the beginning, there was a chimpanzee, as you know, Reiko,
Right.
who was studied for bipedal.
Right. So it
Upright posture.
wasn't like the mind of Reiko. It was more of
Yeah.
so
So Reiko is just the the research subject for morphology or kinetic locomotive analysis, and no one has interested in chimpanzee mind. So it's not really me. My senior colleague, Professor Muro Fushi, she is the founder of I project. She is a person who got the idea, okay, let's start the study of chimpanzee in terms of psychology. It is really the influence from the West. In 1969, as you may know, Gardners and Gardners published a paper in Science talking about Washu chimpanzee use gestural signs to the mutual communication between humans and chimpanzee. Now, 1969 and following 1970s, there are a couple of papers talking about signing apes. And those things was not yet done in Japan. So in 1970s, now Japan was ready to get into this field. And Professor Murofushi made the decision to import chimpanzees to the institute, not only Reiko, but the other chimpanzees. That happened to be I, chimpanzee. So I, chimpanzee, arrived here in the institute in 1977, 1 year later my arrival. So I came first. Then a year later, I, chimpanzee, arrived.
Okay.
But since then, your lives have been quite intertwined.
Yes, I cannot forget the very first day I met the tiny chimpanzee. She was in a small room in the underground level of the main building. No windows, nothing. Just a light, bulb light, hanging from the top, from the ceiling. And tiny chimpanzees, that's all. And for me too, this was the first time for me to see the chimpanzee in a close distance. And so I had no knowledge about chimpanzee. Just my impression is my previous idea is it's a little big monkey, black monkey. But the very first day, in the very first encounter, I recognized this is quite unique creature, because when I look at her eyes, she looked into my eyes. This is very unusual. Already I had 1 year experience with Japanese monkeys. If you look at the eyes, straight gaze, they really hate it.
Yes, it can be problematic.
Scream or aggressive, threaten. So, but that is not the very young chimpanzee. So she carefully looked into my eyes and continued to look at me. So I was so amazed. That gentle fashion, and I happened to have nothing to bring without lab coat, white coat, with black clothes, wrapping to, how do I say in English? It's something here, it's a cylindrical clothes to protect the
Your wrist.
Wrist.
Right.
So I take out this clothes because I had no other thing. So, and gave it to her. Suppose that this is Japanese monkeys, maybe sniffing, try to bite.
Sure.
And it's not food, so just throw it away. That's it. But Ai chimpanzee, she received the clothes and put it into the arm.
Wow.
Slide up and slide down and slide up and slide down, just like mine.
Sure.
And then pulled it out and give it back to me.
Wow.
So it was completely new world for me. I instantaneously recognized it's not a monkey, it's something else. So I really want to know the mind of this young chimpanzee. So every day was new for me since then. So every day, 7 days a week, I met Ai chimpanzee, and based on our previous skills, advantage, computer controlled experiments of monkeys, already we have the accumulation for a decade, 10 years, because Department of Psychology was there in the very early age of the institute. So already we have been studying monkeys' behavior in the lab setting. So it was easy for me to the techniques and knowledge of monkeys to chimpanzees. So IE project is featured by computer-controlled automatic experiment from the beginning. That is a clear difference from the sign language study.
Right. And what would you say was the main reason for deciding to be fully automatic?
Objective way. The science should be objective. So I don't like chattering ape episodes. I wanted to become objective scientists. That is one. And another is I came from human visual information processing and rat brain neuroscience. So the discipline I was trained is more objective, more precise. So so-called psychophysics. So you may manipulate the variables. Then depending variables, the behavior should be clearly described and defined. So this kind of, how about the relationship of the physical world and psychological world? So this was the original question of me. So that I did not study the topics like language or communication or social interaction. No, I was focusing on color vision, shape perception, and concept of number.
And that's probably the most well-known part of the eye project is the perception of numbers. And
yes,
so.
Because there is initial constraints of eye project. It should be the last and tail end of ape language projects already done in the West. Now Japan should catch up to the front. So people are so much interested in ape language. So as an assistant professor, only one thing I was asked is something related to the language is necessary because of the research grant. People's concerns about linguistic capability of apes. But my concern is how to know the mind of chimpanzees. So my idea is the number concept it's a part of linguistic concept, but it's quite small and clearly defined. The word of integer like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like a symbol numeral corresponding to one concept. Yeah. And there is a huge possibility of like addition and subtraction, or even just the symbol like 12. 1 and 2 means a different meaning. 12. So numeric code can be a subset of linguistic codes. So that was my original idea, and I think it was quite good point. So precisely defined, and you can manipulate the things objectively. And to manipulate the things very objectively, you have to use computer-controlled apparatus. So from the beginning, it was keyboard interface to the computer, then touch monitor interface to the computer. So more than 3 decades, we are doing eye project. All is featured by this fully automated testing apparatus.
It's quite interesting, as you mentioned, more than 3 decades of this research, yet this PRI is still the only place where that setup exists in the extent that it does now.
Well, I think in Germany and in the United States, they started the things to some extent, and they are doing those fully automated system to some extent. But thanks to our past achievement, I think eye project and the chimpanzee intelligence test fully automated apparatus, it was always the front line in the past 3 decades. So, but I think now people are trying to follow.
Right. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about kind of how the chimpanzees here are different from other chimpanzees because they've had 3 decades of exposure to the touch panels.
Ah, I see. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Thanks to Japanese primatology, I'm always paid attention to the wild. That is one. So, 1986, it's me who decided to go to Africa to know the chimpanzee in the wild, because already I project started. So I myself know to some extent about chimpanzee mind, but the very naive question, how this intelligence is utilized in their natural habitat. I try to be a unique researcher who combine laboratory research and field research. So this, my orientation is important, and through this experience in the wild, I recognize the importance of the community, the group. It's not a simple aggregation of chimpanzees. Chimpanzees has 3 generations, cross-generation community, and each individual live in the community. So suppose that even if you are interested in a single chimpanzee mind, that chimpanzee should kept in a community to be a good, normal one. So I was one of the first persons in Japan paid attention to environmental enrichment. And still, my research is characterized by group living chimpanzee, not simple aggregation, but the community level. So PRI chimpanzee is a community of 3 generations and 14 chimpanzees. So I try to keep the community as a whole. So I myself did not much work about social intelligence. It's Chris and your generation, young generation, did a lot of good studies of 2 chimpanzees pulling the rope together, two chimpanzees collaborate, or altruistic behavior and so forth. But all coming from the community-based chimpanzee as a subject. I think that is quite different from the predecessors in the West. They are focusing on individual chimpanzee like Washu, Seala, Lana, Kanzi. So
and also human raised.
Yes, human raised. So in the year 2000, we entered the new era of I project, I and Ayumu. So the babies, 3 babies were born in 2000. At that time, I made a very clear decision: no more human rearing. Don't touch. So the chimpanzee child has a right to be raised by the biological mother. You should not separate mother and infant. So mother-infant is a pair of the research subject. But thanks to the long-term relationship between the mother and the researcher, you can ask the mother, help me to test your child. So it's a triadic relationship. So what I call participant observation. So our participation observation. I participating in the everyday life of chimpanzee mother and infant, and mother helped me to test the kid. And it's exactly the same for us to test human infant in the assistance of the mother. So this setting really opened my eyes to the importance of mother-infant relationship, social relationship. And now your generation are much focusing on social aspects of intelligence. But all is due to group living chimpanzee the community as a whole has been the target of the research.
That's very interesting.
It's very interesting. And so for over 4 decades now, PRI has had quite a successful history and is continuing to grow. And as the director of PRI, we know that you've made strong efforts to increase the growth of PRI. And that's one of the reasons why we can sit here today.
As part of PsyCast.
Yes.
Exactly.
Let's go to the most important and final topic today, PsyCast. PsyCast is Center for International Collaboration and Advanced Studies in Primatology. I think it's a royal road in any kind of disciplines. So any kind of disciplines, when you want to be a pioneer, always to produce the new things, you need the stimulation. This is exchange of information. So not only Japanese going to Africa to do something. No, we should welcome the foreigners coming to Japan to do the things with us. So we can be an equal partner to do a lot of things. And already it was successful in Bosu, Nimba, Guinea, West Africa. It is KUPRI, Kyoto University Primate Research Institute team. It was. But I invited young scholars, young students at that time from the United States, France, UK, and they turned to be a very good scientists. So based on my own successful experience in Bosu Nimba, to keep running the site, I really need the help, the collaboration from foreign young scholars. I just replanted this idea to the whole institute too. So if I have the center like PsyCasp to attract the attention of foreign students, because we have the resources. One, Japanese monkeys, yes. Chimpanzee laboratory, yes. And a lot of opportunity in the field work everywhere in Africa or Borneo, wherever. So in terms of primatology, I'm not talking about the disciplines in general. In terms of primatology, Japan had the great advantage.
Yes.
And we are ready to serve for the community in general. So for that purpose, I created PsyCasp and started a new path. I mean, the special examination for foreign students. So entrance examination in English, education in English, and PhD in English.
That's right. And so far we've been successful with about 5 students currently.
Yes, and thanks to Andrew. Your effort, yes. So, so far we had already the students like Chris, so Monbusho, MEXT, Ministry of Education, Science and Culture, gave the special scholarship for foreign students. We continue do this kind of thing. But even more, we should welcome any person who are qualified to become a good scientist. I want to continue to welcome those young scholars who can be the future for us.
I think that's a good place to end the interview.
Absolutely.
But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Yes.
We hope to have you again in the future.
Yes.
At some point.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Okay.